All right, everyone, get ready for a wild ride, because today we're diving headfirst into 18th century India.
Uh-oh. Sounds intense.
Oh, it is, trust me.
Okay, I'm ready.
We're talking about the time when the Mughal Empire was falling apart,
Right. The Mughals.
and those seeds of British rule were starting to take root.
Yeah, that's a pivotal moment for sure.
We've got tons of sources for this one, too.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, we've got scholarly histories, of course,
Okay, the usual suspects.
but also personal accounts
Oh, juicy.
from people like John Beams, who lived through it all.
Wow, first-hand accounts. That's amazing.
Even some architectural analysis.
Huh, how does that work?
We can actually see the power struggles play out in the buildings and structures of the time.
Whoa, that's fascinating. So what's the plan for today's deep dive then?
Well, we're going to figure out what made this 50-year period so volatile.
Okay, 50 years of chaos. Sounds like fun.
And I'm really curious to see what stands out to you as we go through this.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1707, and the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb has just died.
Ah, Aurangzeb, powerful ruler.
Yeah, but his death is like a crack in the foundation.
Oh, I see. The empire starts to weaken.
Exactly. Things start unraveling pretty quickly.
Makes sense. Big empires, they're fragile.
And it wasn't just internal conflicts, there were also external pressures.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, ambitious regional leaders saw an opportunity.
Of course, someone's got to fill the power vacuum.
Plus, you've got these European traders starting to make their moves.
Those traders, always looking for an advantage.
In Delhi, the heart of the Mughal Empire, it gets sacked, not once, but twice in this period.
Whoa, twice.
That's rough. First by Nadir Shah from Persia in 1739.
Yeah, I've heard of him, ruthless conqueror.
Then again by Afghans in the 1750s.
Man, they really went through it.
It's like a symbol of how much things had changed.
Totally. If they can sack Delhi, the Mughals are in trouble.
So you've got all this instability in a power vacuum.
It's like a recipe for chaos, right?
Exactly. And in steps the East India Company.
Ah, the infamous East India Company.
Most people think of them as this unstoppable force.
Yeah, they basically ruled India for a while.
But their rise to power wasn't so straightforward.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, early on, they were more focused on trade and diplomacy.
So not just brute force.
Not at first, they were very strategic.
I guess you have to be when you're dealing with so many different powers.
Exactly. They played regional powers off against each other.
Divide and conquer tactics. Classic.
One example that surprised me was during the Carnatic Wars in the 1740s.
Those were messy, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, lots of different sides involved.
Right, and the East India Company was right in the middle of it.
Well, actually, the French governor, Joseph Dupleix, he initially tried to stay neutral.
Really? Dupleix, the guy known for fighting the British.
I know, right? He even proposed a peace pact with the British.
Wow, that's wild. So what happened?
Circumstances forced his hand. He ended up getting dragged into the conflict.
So things could have been different.
Totally. The company's rise wasn't inevitable.
History is full of those what-ifs, isn't it?
Absolutely, and this period in India is a perfect example of that.
So much was at stake, and the outcome could have easily been different.
But it wasn't just about politics and military might. India was also going through some internal changes.
Oh yeah, what kind of changes?
Well, economically, the decline of regional powers often coincided with shifts in economic activity.
Interesting, so it's not just a political shakeup, it's an economic one too.
Exactly. And it reminds me of our deep dive into the Janata Party's economic policies much later in Indian history.
Yeah, economic policy always has a huge impact.
Whether it's the 1700s or the 1900s, it's a constant factor.
Right, and it shows how these different periods are connected.
Okay, so we've got political upheaval, economic shifts, but let's not forget the cultural changes.
Oh, right, like what?
Well, the Bhakti movement was gaining momentum during this time.
Ah, the Bhakti movement, personal devotion, direct connection with the divine.
For those of us who aren't religious scholars, could you break that down a bit?
Sure, imagine the dominant religious culture was this grand, elaborate temple.
Okay, I can see that.
Full of rituals and hierarchy, very formal.
Gotcha.
The Bhakti movement was like a pathway that led you around the temple.
Oh, so it's like a shortcut.
In a way, it was a more direct, personal connection with the divine.
So a more individualistic approach to faith.
Exactly. It offered a different path, a different way of understanding faith.
Interesting. So like a spiritual shakeup happening at the same time as all this political drama.
Exactly. And it's not entirely new. Think back to the rise of Buddhism and Jainism.
Right. They also challenged the established order.
Exactly. But the Bhakti movement had its own unique character.
And it left a lasting impact on India's religious landscape.
Absolutely. It's still a major force today.
So we've got political fragmentation, economic shifts, religious changes. It was a time of immense change on multiple levels.
It makes you wonder if these cultural shifts somehow contributed to the political upheaval.
Or were they more of a reaction to it?
That's a great question, and it's one that historians are still debating.
It's a reminder that history is complex and there's no single answer.
Exactly. And to understand this period, we can't just focus on the battles and treaties.
Right, we need to look at the bigger picture, the cultural and social dynamics.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. So we've been digging into all the drama happening within India, but there's a bigger picture here.
Right, got to zoom out a bit.
To really grasp how the East India Company snatched control, we need to look at the global scene.
Okay, like what was going on in the rest of the world?
Well, think big picture. This was the age of, exploration, empires, colonies.
Right. Europe's on the move.
Exactly. You've got Britain, France, the Dutch, Portugal, all competing fiercely.
For what exactly? Just land?
Land, trade routes, resources. They wanted to control it all. Global domination.
So India's sitting there, rich, strategically important.
Prime target, yeah. Like the ultimate prize in this game of empires.
And everyone wants a piece.
Everyone. The East India Company, though, they had Britain's backing growing power.
Which gave them an edge, I'm guessing.
Oh, for sure. But they were also smart about it,
Smart how?
Remember all that internal instability in India we talked about?
Yeah, the regional powers fighting amongst themselves.
The company exploited that brilliantly.
Classic divide and conquer.
Exactly. They'd make alliances with one ruler, then switch sides, play everyone against each other.
Sounds like a lot of backstabbing.
It was a high-stakes game, for sure. Military force, diplomacy, cunning.
So more puppet masters than anything else.
Great way to put it. And this wasn't just an India thing either.
Really?
This strategy, it was happening globally. Europeans used it in the Americas, Africa, all over.
So it was like their playbook for taking over.
Pretty much. But let's fast forward a bit to 1757.
The Battle of Plassey, right.
You got it. Often seen as the moment when the company shifted from traders to rulers.
But we've been talking about how that was brewing for a while, right?
Absolutely. 1757 is important, but those seeds were planted way earlier.
Through all those maneuvers, alliances, taking advantage of rivalry.
Decades of it. It wasn't just one battle that did it.
So it's like a long con, basically.
You could say that, yeah. And here's where we got to remember. History is made by people.
Sure, but there are also those big forces, right? Like global competition, empires wanting more power.
True, those forces exist, but it's people's choices that shape how things actually go down.
Choices of individuals.
Yes. So we've mentioned Dupleix, the French guy who tried to avoid conflict.
Any other big players during this time?
Oh, tons. On the Indian side, there's Siraj Uddola, the Nawab of Bengal.
The one defeated at Plassey.
Yep. Gets painted as weak, incompetent sometimes, but...
Yeah, I bet there's more to the story.
Oh, yeah. He inherited a mess, basically. Kingdom in turmoil, rebels, threats from outside.
Rough situation to walk into.
No kidding. Then, on the British side, you've got Robert Clive.
The company's military leader.
Brilliant strategist. Ruthless, too. His win at Plassey was huge for the company.
So this whole period's just full of these larger-than-life figures.
Totally. Each with their own goals, motivations.
And understanding them helps us understand how it all went down.
Exactly. But we've talked a lot about politics, military stuff.
What about regular people?
Excellent question. Historians are digging into that more and more now.
Because for a while, it was just the elite's story, right?
Yeah.
Rulers, generals.
Yep, top-down view. But now, we're trying to see it from the ground level.
Farmers, artisans, everyday folks.
What were their lives like during this upheaval? That's what we want to know.
And what have we found? Was it just chaos for them?
Well, a lot of hardship, that's for sure. Old systems collapsing, new rulers, economic disruption.
Must felt like the world was constantly changing.
Oh, yeah, imagine. Who's in charge, what the laws are, how much taxes you owe, could all change overnight.
Talk about stressful.
And on top of that, environmental stuff. Droughts, famines, floods.
Not uncommon back then.
Nope. And they could wreck communities that were already struggling.
So, political and environmental chaos, rough combo.
It was a tough time, no doubt. But here's the thing.
What's that?
People were resilient. They adapted to new rulers, new systems, found ways to make it work.
Human spirit, gotta love it.
Seriously. But as the East India Company gets more powerful...
How did they view the people they were now ruling?
That's where things get even more interesting. And that's a story for part 3 of our deep dive.
Okay, so the East India Company, they've clawed their way to the top. Mix of business smarts, military muscle, and playing all those Indian rivalries to their advantage.
It's a complex story, for sure.
But now they're in charge, right? So how they treat the people they were, well, ruling.
That's where it gets messy.
Messy how?
At first, remember, they're all about trade, profits, keeping those local rulers happy.
Playing the good guest, basically.
Yeah, you could say that. But as their power grows, so does their sense of, like, entitlement, superiority, even.
Ah, so going from guest to landlord changes things.
Big time. That shift from we're just trading partners to we're in control now.
It does something to your head, I guess.
It did. Companies' mindset changes, their policies too.
Yeah.
They're imposing laws, taxes, messing with local customs.
At what point did Indians realize, wait, these guys aren't leaving?
It wasn't one big moment, more like a slow realization.
Makes sense. India wasn't one unified country back then, right?
Tons of kingdoms, communities, each with their own thing going on.
So some might have welcomed the company at first.
Oh, yeah, as a way to balance out other powers they didn't like. Others resisted right away.
This is where the Albert Bill story fits in, yeah.
Exactly. Decades later, the idea of Indians and British being equal under the law.
Still a no-go for a lot of Brits.
Huge no-go. Exposes the racism, the prejudice, fueling this whole colonial thing.
So remind us what happened again.
Okay, so British proposed this law, Albert Bill.
Simple enough, right?
On the surface, yeah. It allowed Indian judges to oversee cases involving Europeans, too.
Seems fair.
You'd think so, but British folks living in India, they lose it.
Really? Just over that?
It was seen as radical, unacceptable, the whole thing.
That blows my mind. Like Indian judges. That's the line.
It was more than just a few people thinking that way, too.
Oh, man.
John Beams, British official at the time, called it distasteful, humiliating.
I remember that quote.
He was afraid it'd impair the prestige of British rule.
Just the idea of equality being a threat.
That's the core of it, yeah. For a lot of the British establishment, racial hierarchy,
It's built into the whole system.
it was the system. And that's a vital thing to remember.
Why is that?
Because the East India Company might be long gone, but
The impact's still there?
huge impact. Those legacies of colonial rule, the power structures, economic gaps, social divisions.
It echoes through time.
Exactly. They still shape India today in so many ways.
So after this whole wild ride through history,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway?
I'd say it's this. Look beyond the surface. This transition from regional powers to colonial rule.
It wasn't just about who won what battle.
It's deeper than that. It's about ideas.
Yeah.
Ideas about race, about power, who gets to be in charge.
And those ideas, they stick around.
Oh, they do. Long after the company itself is gone, those ideas keep impacting things.
Wow. So to everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a new way to see this time in Indian history.
It's been a pleasure unpacking all this with you.
Keep asking questions, keep learning. Until next time, folks, keep diving deep.